From the House of Commons today, where the Conservatives continue to question how much progress the Carney government has made in trade negotiations with the United States. Now, it comes as Prime Minister Mark Carney is preparing to head down to D.C. for more meetings with the American administration, including U.S. President Donald Trump. CTV News is reporting there could be movement on the steel and aluminum tariffs. So how important is it for Carney to get a win while in D.C.? Let's ask our front bench. Sabrina Grover was a federal Liberal candidate in the 2021 election. She's now senior advisor at North Star Public Affairs. Melanie Paradis is former communications director to Erin O'Toole. She's now the president of Texture Communications. Former interim NDP national director Carl Belanger is here. He's now the president of Traction Strategies. And we have CTV national news correspondent Abigail Beeman, who has been reporting on this all day today. So, Abigail, let's start with you and what we're hearing ahead of this meeting, who the ministers are going there, and what the expectations are.
Well, Mike, there's a whole group of these key ministers that we've seen attached to this file for a while now. So we know that Dominic LeBlanc, of course, will be there, as well as Industry Minister Melanie Joly and Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand. One of the experts that I was speaking to on this file today described it this way, that the Canadian Embassy has been abuzz with meetings and invitations and as many people as possible working on this file, but that it's very notable that this is the moment that the Prime Minister has decided to come. And the hope or the expectation is that something, rather than just talk, will emerge from that. And what you referenced earlier is that CTV News is reporting that the Canadian side is expecting some progress specifically on steel and aluminum tariffs. And we heard that in your interview earlier with Mr. McKenna as well, reference to the pain that that's causing on the American side of this as well. So not expecting movement on autos, what one source is telling us, but potentially some movement on steel and aluminum.
Carl, how important is it for something to happen? And I say that, like, for Mark Carney to come back to Canada and to be able to say, this is what I was able to accomplish while I was down there.
Well, 100,000 jobs lost in the last 2 months. That's how important it is. And you can go and with a diversification strategy and travel the world and sign all the landmark agreements that you want. If they don't actually deliver anything in terms of jobs, it all goes back to the United States. And how can we sign a deal to try to mitigate some of the damage that has already been done? So that's why it's so important. And so what we're hearing is that, you know, he may target some sector and pick some winners, which means that eventually we will have also some losers. And that's where the concerns will grow in some sectors who are wondering what is going to happen to us.
Yeah, because there will be some that may not get that cutout, Melanie. So with any kind of relief, if there is some on steel and aluminum tariffs, will that buy him any kind of relief from opposition parties in the House of Commons?
Not until there's a good deal. That's what he promised Canadians in the election, and it's been months that we've been waiting to see actual, action, to see real progress towards that deal. There's just been a lot of talk. So the pressure keeps mounting every time there's a meeting like this. The pressure rises on Prime Minister Carney. I think that on Sunday, the premiers and the governors of the Great Lakes and the St. Lawrence Seaway are having their own summit, and they're going to have a press conference, I think, on Monday. Presumably, they're going to be calling for an increase in trade around that region, around the Great Lakes. They want to see trade diversification and trade, like more trade together, as opposed to this cooling that we've been seeing. So I'm sure that we're going to hear them calling for that, and that's only going to increase the pressure on Tuesday's meeting.
Sabrina, what realistically do you think Carney is looking at going into this and being able to deal with U.S. President Donald Trump? Because, I mean, as Abigail had said, CTV is reporting that there could be movement on steel and aluminum, but that's Friday. As of Friday, we're hearing that, and we know that a lot can change over a weekend, in 24 hours, frankly, with U.S. President Donald Trump. So how important is it, though, for Carney to go into this and to try and nail something down and to really sort of also come back and present it to Canadians so that then when they see it, that they say, okay, we understand that things are actually progressing here, instead of this just being a check-in?
Yeah, I mean, I think from one aspect, I would say Mark Carney's done a very good job at relationship building with Donald Trump. You know, going to the U.S. a second time, I think being open to that possibility and putting some of these conversations actually in person, as opposed to perhaps using your subsidiaries like ministers instead of actually being there yourself. So I think he's doing the right things when it comes to building those relationships. I think it's really hard to still predict where the United States is going to come out on all of this, and if they're even interested in negotiating on a deal today, or if they do want to wait until closer to 2026, closer to CUSMA, closer to the midterms. And I say that because, you know, as late as last week, you still saw Ambassador Hoekstra, you know, positioning threats to Canada, right? Saying, well, maybe the pre-clearance will close because at Canadian airports on getting into the United States, because we're just not flying there enough anymore. And so they continue to kind of fall back on these like threats and these weird niches. And so I think it's really hard to say, does the United States want a deal right now? And so I think that's why you haven't seen the expectations be set by Mark Carney and the team.
Yeah, and Abigail, when you consider, you know, what NAFTA 1.0 was in the negotiations, I mean, this is very, very different. A lot of the negotiations are not happening in public. I mean, I remember, and we covered it, you know, you had Chrystia Freeland on the steps of United States Trade Representative giving press conferences. We're not hearing
very
any
often.
of that.
Yeah, it would come out very frequently. And I made a point of that in my story today. It took some reporters yelling at the Prime Minister, "Have you spoken to Trump?" And then he turns around and says yes, and that's the first we've heard of a conversation, right? We aren't getting these readouts or even indications at a very basic level that the two sides are talking. But the overall message that we're getting is that they are. And we saw LeBlanc's testimony at the Senate committee this week, giving some indications that he felt that there is not only progress, but the ability to get some kind of a sectoral tariff deal separate from CUSMA, and that the CUSMA talks about a relaunch of CUSMA have been productive so far. So we'll see, you know, what bears out. Those are the signals, but we're not getting very many of them.
Yeah, and Carl, how important is it to signal to the Canadian public so that they understand and they're reassured versus just getting the work done and making sure you're getting a good deal?
Well, yeah, I mean, you can signal, and that's part of the travel agenda of the Prime Minister, is that he's doing something, he's doing things. So for now, he's not paying a heavy political price for the fact that he has not solved the trade war yet.
Right.
But soon enough, he will have to show results, and those results can come with a deal, any kind of deal that benefit Canada and not only the United States.